colleagues, and a very warm welcome into I can't believe the last education conversations for 2024. It's been already a long year, and I know a lot of you in the room are already feeling exactly like me that the last sprint to the end. But we are so excited to be here this afternoon with all of you. I see so many familiar faces in the audience, and I really want to thank especially those people who are committed to the education conversation series and who make it every time we announce it. We are really heartfelt in terms of our gratitude to you for always being a part of this conversation. Today we are still in celebration of World Teachers Day, even though it was official on the 5th of October. But we want to sort of, in a way, say that it could be World Teachers Month, if not the year, in terms of it also being the year of education, as been announced by the African Union as well. So today we are in a wonderful conversation centered around the theme that has been chosen for World Teachers Day 2024. And it is about valuing teachers' voices towards a new social contract for education. And one of the things that we are all very well aware of in all of our spaces is that we have our teachers working quite hard in our classrooms. But when it comes to their voices, no matter how loud they speak, sometimes it is silenced or almost never heard and never makes its way into the kind of transformation that our country needs. So I hope that today's conversation is going to be engaging and that you will participate. We also have breakaway rooms. But we start off the session with a welcome from the CEO of Kagiso Trust, Sizakele Mphatso. Siza, I'm going to hand over to you to welcome everybody and for a short address on the theme.
Thank you, Prof. And I'm Sizakele, the head of education, not the CEO. And I welcome the position anyway. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and to the KT executives and trustees, UJ executives, esteemed colleagues, social partners, and dedicated educators. Good afternoon. Teaching is not a job, it's a lifestyle. It permeates your whole life. Hence, we always hear people saying, once a teacher, always a teacher. And today, as you have rightfully said, Prof, we are gathering here today to discuss a pivotal topic that stands at the heart of our education program as the Trust, which is valuing teacher voices towards a new social contract for education. As we navigate the complexities of today's educational challenges, it is important that we center our conversation around those who are on the forefront, our teachers, the community builders. Teachers are not just facilitators of learning. They are advocates, mentors, coaches, and champions for our students and communities. Their daily experiences and insights in diverse classrooms provide a rich understanding of what truly works in education. However, too often, their voices are not included in discussions about policy and curriculum reforms or any changes that are related to education. And therefore, this offers us a disservice, not only to our educators, but to our entire educational system. As we envisage a new social contract, we must recognize that empowering teachers is not beneficial. It is essential. We must create spaces where perspectives of the teachers are valued, and where their contribution is also taken into consideration when decisions are made, and their professional expertise is recognized and praised, motivated where it needs to, but mostly respected. And for us to achieve the contribution, the valued contribution from our teachers, and for us to value them, we require a collaborative approach, one that includes teachers as equal partners in shaping the policies that affect their classroom and communities. We must work on fostering an environment of continuous professional growth and support. For us as Kagiso Trust, our education model's theory of change, it's centered on the teacher. For us, investing in teachers means investing in the future of our students. We have observed over the years as we work within the education system that when teachers feel that they are heard, they are supported, they have a huge potential of inspiring and uplifting the education system. And this will assist not only themselves or their students where they are, but it helps in navigating the futures of education and ensuring that as they do that, they provide quality outcomes for our learners that can impact into the quality of the workforce. As we embark then today on this important conversation, let us all commit to building a future where teachers are not only heard, but celebrated. Together, we can create an educational system that values collaboration, innovation, and above all, the invaluable contributions of our teachers. With those few words, Prof. and the colleagues and everyone online, we are warmly welcoming you to this installment of the conversation, and we say thank you for being here today. We're looking forward to the discussions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Caesar. That was an amazing address, and I love the fact that you mentioned that teachers should not just only be heard, but they should also be celebrated. And Caesar, on my behalf, you are our CEO, irrespective, but thanks for that correction. I really appreciate it. Colleagues, we have two amazing speakers who are going to whet our appetites with some of this before we begin our own conversations. But I do encourage you to please, as always, use the chat space, use the space in which to put any questions you might have, any contributions, any thoughts, anything that you think that would contribute to the theme. And as you listen to the speaker, I know we are all also sometimes having lots of thoughts. Put it into the chat space, and so we can share that with everybody, and everybody is able to then access it. And also the speaker will also be able to then contribute once they're done. And of course, that conversation will continue to the breakout room. But this afternoon, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce Professor Ken Nkosa from Rhodes University. Professor Nkosa and I go back a really long way, and I consider him to be a mentor, a friend, a brother, a fellow struggler, and he and I really resonate on many, many fronts. So to have him in the room is particularly a honor for me. And I will introduce him as part of his biography, where he is a science education professor at Rhodes University, as I said before. He's involved in various academic and leadership roles. He chairs GADRA and is part of the Vice Chancellor's School Initiative. His research focuses on science curriculum, professional development, indigenous knowledge systems, education for sustainable development, and citizenship education. Ken has published extensively, and he holds leadership positions in academic associations, one of which I know is SAMSTay. He participates in multiple local and international research projects and serves on the editorial board of the Research in Science and Technological Education's Journal. His topic, to whet our appetites and to get the conversation started, is entitled The Critical Role of Science Teacher Voices, Can Indigenous research agendas foster transformative energy? And with that, over to you, Ken. We look forward to an amazing discussion.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kat, for your kind introduction, and to Meme Mapotsua, thank you very much for your warm welcome too. And indeed, Prof. Kat and I come a very long way, and you realize that when her name is shortened is K-A-T, and when my name is shortened is K-E-N. So we've got so many commonalities. And thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this powerful and important session. When Prof. Kat invited me, even though my hands were full, I felt I couldn't say no. So I'm really delighted to be part of this family. And I will share my screen now. There's something here. Okay, slideshow. Yes, this thing. I can't get rid of this. Right, as you can see, my title is, as Prof. Kat has read, I'm trying to get rid the critical role of science teachers' voices. Can Indigenous research agendas foster transformative agency? And as I was planning this presentation, I came across this, but I couldn't reference it. So if it's yours, please, I'm not plagiarizing. Engineers make bridges, artists make paintings, scientists make rockets, but teachers make them all. And that shows the power of teachers in our communities. And as I've been introduced, Professor Kenneth Mlungisi-Ngoza, and emeritus professor at Rose University, retired end of last year after celebrating 40 years as a teacher and 22 years as an academic at Rose University. And I'm currently in Namibia at the International University of Management, and I'm a dean of the School of Primary Education. Now, when we think of teachers also, we need to think beyond the classroom and think about teachers who are informal in our communities. For example, that mama there. And I'm even afraid to call her a woman. And that mama has produced professors, that's me, and as professor, produced doctors on the side. So the teaching starts at home, really. And that's why if you miss that education from home, you can be in trouble. My presentation has got 3 components. I look at the context and personality, Indigenous research stories. I will only share 2, and then some concluding remarks. I don't know how to get rid of this thing at the top. I'm so sorry for this. Where do we come from, and where are we, and where to? As you all know, that colonialism and apartheid denigrated and invisibilized other ways of knowing, thinking, being, and sadly, in the process, teachers were silenced. With the hope of the transformation in curriculum, it was hoped that teachers' voices would be more heard. However, we seem to be having tensions or contradictions between curriculum formulation, implementation, and attainment because of top-down approaches. As you will see or hear, my presentation is about bottom-up decolonization. Hence, we have calls for decolonization and indigenization of the curriculum and research. And I pose this question, would Ubuntu and resilience be the answer there? Living with nature, be visitors. I remember as a child, we were living in a one-roomed house made of holes and mud. And my mother used to use a cow dung as floor polish. But one day we were surprised when bees got to our house, leaving all the beautiful houses in the vicinities. And of course, as kids, we were scared because we associated bees with pain. To our surprise, when my mother came back from work, she told us that bees are indwendwe, which you can translate to visitors, and they bring good news to the family. And so she said she was going to make umqombothi to thank the ancestors. I'd like just to highlight that the song by Yvonne Chaka Chaka, which says, umqombothi is an African beer. Actually, that is not correct. Umqombothi is food. Now, umqombothi was made. I regret I did not watch the process. Instead, we went to play. But however, when umqombothi was ready, it was sieved, and our parents invited our neighbors to come and drink umqombothi together with them. I remember one of the songs which they sang was, "Uwonkqonkqoza xa ungena endlini yam, ubothi molo xa ungena endlini yam." You have to know when you come to my house, you should greet when coming to my house. Could it be that then we were taught Ubuntu and how to preserve nature? Sadly, when I started school, all that knowledge was not referred to. Hence, it is so important for us to find ways to decolonize the curriculum, in particular the science curriculum, because we are meant to memorize science concepts. Even essays you had asked to write about a journey, about a train, yet we were never on the train. And what is my personality and reflexivity then? Personality has to do with inside and outside issues, as you all know. I like the metaphor of an onion, which has got layers. It's like peeling that. And I position myself as an insider in these research projects. And of course, it is more than power dynamics, as the name seems to suggest misleadingly. Instead, it has to do with ethnicity, culture, language, marital qualifications, and so on. And we should embrace each other's cultures in our education system. On the other hand, reflexivity has to do with reflecting and taking actions throughout the research process. Now, how do we then, operationalize the integration of IK in science? Teachers are at the center. They get involved with the curriculum. And of course, they have to know the past by going to the community, to that mama I showed you, tap into that cultural heritage, go back to the classroom, and make science relevant and accessible to learners through integrating IK. And when they go back to the community, that is referred to as retroductive learning, whereas when they go back to in the classroom, that is retroactive learning. You can think of this as taking the community to the classroom and the classroom back to the community. I would like to share a story of one of my PhD scholars who decided to sustain his school of excellence through research. Oftentimes, we tend to look at problems that are there at school in contrast, in his study, he was looking at how the township school, which is one of the best schools, in Makanda and in the Sarah Batman district. In his study, he worked with teachers from foundation phase up to grade 12, and that is inconceivable. Is it possible for a grade, a foundation phase teacher to work with grade? That's what our colleagues were asking. And he introduced what we call reflective journals, and used his learners' reflective journals to empower teachers on how to reflect, because it's so important for teachers in the process of transformative agency to be able to reflect. One of the teachers, Mamek Deba, commented, "The challenge I had before watching the video, I did not know how to start my reflective, but the videos made it easy for me in terms of sharing my thoughts, insights, feelings, emotions, and ideas. So I was able to start." Now, this reflects the fact that teachers' voices and inner feelings are of critical importance. And the other one said, afterwards seeing grade 12 learners reading reflective journals in a video format, it became clear that as educators, we can get to understand if learners understood the lesson that was taught or not. And now capacity building of teachers is so critical. Those were the workshops which the teachers had to make sure that they were empowered, they understood the curriculum document, and they understand about lesson study. We cannot just assume that teachers will be able to do things on their own without any form of support. And of course, he went beyond that and engaged the indigenous knowledge custodians. And the teachers were taken to the sea, as you see in that picture, which resembles an out-of-school context for learning. One of the teachers commented that it was an eye-opening and formative session. I have learned that indigenous knowledge cannot be separated from a curriculum because there's a strong connection between nature and the ancestors. Today, I have learned that there is a strong connection between the moon and the true tidal waves. I'm not going to read, I'll just read part of that. I observed that Majeke is a highly knowledgeable man. And so teachers were starting to understand that actually our parents and grandparents have knowledge to share with. Here, again, that was a practical demonstration of homemade bread by Umama, who you see in that photograph. What was fascinating about this is when she explained that when you cook bread and you realize that the water is finished before the bread is well cooked, you cannot pour cold water. And the teachers had an opportunity to ask questions from Umama, why not? And one of the teachers burst out and explained the Chartles principle. Yes, I found a simple way to explain the effects of changes at equilibrium. Now, from the process, simple process, this teacher was able to pick up how to explain a principle which is a frustration for learners and even for teachers. That was a sharing cycle with the teachers, with the indigenous knowledge, custodians, to show that when you do research, you shouldn't go and just, mine information and extract it and go away. You need to find ways of giving back. And Umamtlicha said, when I was invited to come and show the teachers how to make homemade bread, I did not know that I would be contributing to knowledge, education. And now when I hear the teachers speaking like this, I'm very happy and I feel appreciated. As I said, that this is one of the best schools, and that was an article that was written. And that was the former principal of the school who worked with his school teachers And now he has been promoted to become a circuit manager. And the school is expecting 100% pass rate this year, regardless of being a township school. Now, this is Ndlovu's research project, whereby we invited Umama Nolingo to come and make Umqombothi so that the teachers could find out the science concept embedded in the process. We argue that indigenous knowledge and what we call westernized knowledge do have links actually. Now, this study was, motivated or triggered by the fact that 2017, 49 teachers, including subject advisors, were registered at Rose University, and 19 of them, could not complete the course. They were excluded. And we asked ourselves, what could be the reason? Oftentimes we talk of, epistemological access to our universities, and we don't talk about ontological access. So I invited Umama to demonstrate that process. And, what fascinated us was when she said, if you want to test if Umqombothi is ready, you need to bring a burning stick to the top. And if it goes off, then you must know that it is ready to be saved. And then teachers had to think why, what could be, the science around that. As you can see, the way she's wearing, if you go to KFC, you'll find that the ladies who are serving there, they've got something in their heads, and so are indigenous people. But teachers' voices matter. I will just read a few of these. Interesting to this process for me was that to try and identify all the science concepts, estimation, ratios, separating substance, fermentation, tests for carbon dioxide, without Umama Joyce knowing how scientific she is. Except for the scientific part, I also got a bit of life skills during the process. Never judge before you have proof. When reflecting on the whole process of making Umqombothi, I can only say, wow, an experience of my life. It gave me a sense of belonging to a special group of people as part of the Western culture. I'm not really aware of such rich cultures and beliefs in other cultures. Most importantly, the storytelling that accompanied the process was really interesting and formative. Oftentimes in research, we hear that participants have to be anonymous. I wonder if that is not equivalent to stealing knowledge from communities. Now, these are the teachers who were involved in Ndlovu's study. They received awards in 2019 and 2021. Moreover, now those 3 teachers you see there all graduated with distinctions on the 11th of October this year, their masters. They were in that group of 2017, and they were asking a question, who's next? We made sure that they stayed in the system, and in January this year, I secured funding from Rhodes so that they could come for the first time out of the country to Namibia, where I am. Food for thought I would like to leave you with. I'm retelling this story. There was a farmer who grew excellent quality corn. Every year she won an award for the best grown corn. One journalist went to interview her and learned something interesting about how she grew the corn. The journalist discovered that the farmer shared her seed corn with her neighbors. How can we afford to share your best seed corn with your neighbors when they enter a corn competition with you each year? The journalist asked. Why, sir? Said the farmer. Didn't you know that the wind picks up pollen from the ripening corn and swirls it from field to field? If my neighbors grow inferior corn, cross-pollination will steadily degrade the quality of my corn. However, if I am to grow good corn, I must help my neighbors group Kontu. This is what we want from our teachers, to help one another. The moral of this story, in short, is that those who want to live meaningfully and well must help enrich the lives of others, including the bees I showed you earlier. For the value of life is measured by the lives it touches. Here lies the importance of Ubuntu, which underpin our research projects. Atil Mbembe said, to reopen the future of our planet to all who inhabit it, we'll have to learn how to share it again among humans, but also between humans and non-humans, between the multiple species that populate our planet. It is only under these conditions that becoming aware of our precariousness as a species in the face of ecological threats will be able to overcome the possibility of outright human extinction opened by this new epoch, the epoch of the Anthropocene. Some concluding remarks. Ubuntu storytelling entails people sit around the fire getting equal heat. Knowledge and wisdom are passed on in the form of stories. Most importantly, Ubuntu entails connectedness and humble togetherness. I'd like to conclude by what I said. I was told by my mother when I was 5 years old. I was taken to the doctor and there was no transport. And I said to her, she told me, Nazi inyawo, Nansi indlela. And this translates to, here are the feet, here's the road. I'm saying to all of you who are involved in this conversation, Nazi inyawo, Nansi indlela. However, an African proverb says, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk together. I thank you.
Wow, an immensely powerful conversation, Ken, and I think you've reminded us of so many things that has permeated the South African education system. Many claps, coming up from the audience, and I think they're all in complete agreement with me. But I think you reminded us that part of valuing teachers' voices links to conceptions of Ubuntu and the ways in which we can harness those voices. Using reflection as a tool, as being something that we would like teachers to use, but then who then harnesses that information? We do it during research, but perhaps there's a way in which schools in general can have that as an ongoing practice and something that can be used within the school itself to be able to harness some of those voices. I think that you will concur with me as you see the chat room buzzing with all kinds of agreements with you. And a lot of people were also talking about the connection to the dropout rates of children and how difficult they find the curriculum when they do not see themselves within the curriculum itself. I'm just going to mosey into the chat just to see if there's any questions for you, Ken, before I move on. And then just to say, Sadi was asking, how can school leaders operationalize a decolonized psyche? How can they take the baton of embracing indigenous knowledges and guiding its integration into the curriculum? Because often, as you know, teachers will say that they're so busy trying to be, everybody's slave in a way, that there often isn't any space for them to experiment and try new things. So I don't know if you want to just maybe respond to Sadi's observation there. How can school leaders operationalize a decolonized psyche?
Thank you very much, Prof. Kat, for such insightful question. I think I showed you two stories here. One of the school principal who's actually trying that. And as I said, when he formulated his study, he said, his study is about how to sustain, the school being a school of excellence. I think it goes back to my story I retold here about the farmer sharing seeds. Oftentimes, sadly, leaders and school principals don't, learn from one another on how they do things. And I think it's high time, because this is about the future of the nation. It's not about school A, so we need to find ways of how we can learn from one another, work together. And of course, as I said here, our indigenous people are so knowledgeable. Oftentimes, we complain in school that parents are not involved. I think perhaps sometimes the fault lies with us. We not, value the knowledge that they have. So if we can also start doing that, and bring them on board and say, let us find ways of working together. And as I said earlier on that, because when learners come to the classroom, they are indeed not empty vessels. They come with a lot of knowledge. And of course, we have to be careful to romanticize indigenous knowledge as well. We need to clear any misconceptions that might come with it. So it's not only about making science accessible and relatable only, also it's about correcting things there. So I think we need to start small. And I'm so delighted that that school principal is actually Mr. Mayana, is a circuit manager. Now he's starting to, share, the importance and the power of reflective journals, as you say, you are using in the program, so that it can be something that is used in schools. And once they get used to that, and then it will bring up the idea of integrating indigenous knowledge within the school.
No, thanks. I think that the more we highlight the work of these kinds of school principals, it will definitely start to encourage other people. And glad to know that as district director, he will also be making the circle bigger in some ways around some of this. But I think we need more of this to permeate our spaces. So there is a question in the chat related to the question of bringing the community into the classroom and the classroom into the community. And perhaps maybe if you could just perhaps elaborate on some of the ways in which we can encourage teachers to do that, because oftentimes, like you say, it's perhaps our fault that we exclude and not invite people into our space. In your opinion, what would be the ways we could get teachers to start to value some of these knowledges that are beyond the book, but also use the knowledge in a way that is going to be beneficial, and like you say, not romanticize, and try to find the linkages where appropriate?
Thank you, Prof. Kate. I must say, I'm a really proud professor, and I was born and bred in Makanda, Ekhini. But, in my school days, I knew that Rhodes was a promised land. We had to apply to Pretoria to go and study there, and I remember I was first rejected, but I later went back because I was resilient. Now, so I'm the first professor actually to invite Umama to come and make umqombothi at the university. And I don't know what my colleagues were thinking about me. I'm sure they were saying, this guy is mad upstairs. I don't know. Even perhaps they did not verbalize it, but they said in their hearts. But what I was trying to demonstrate is that even though at universities we claim to be, constructing and developing knowledge, in the communities, we do have our knowledgeable, indigenous people. In fact, what I'm grappling with regarding Umama is how can I recommend that she be, given, awarded an honorary doctorate, because she's produced so many, masters and PhD students all over in South Africa and Namibia, so many of them, through that practice. And then they were able to take that and relate it to their own context, and so if we can identify, she was also involved in one of my current PhD students, and his project was on, how to, use imifino which is one of the healthiest foods in our communities, to teach about nutrition. So she was involved in many of those projects. So if we can, depending on the context and where we are, identify community members who we refer to as indigenous knowledge custodians, because they are custodians of this knowledge. And most importantly, Prof. Ket, you know, we teachers, we need to document this knowledge so that it is not lost. So we need to make use of it, document it, and yeah. So if we can do this in our courses, I mean, those 3 teachers I showed you, you know, they were so miserable because, you know, they could not relate to the science we were making them to memorize at the university. But immediately when we introduced this approach of tapping into the cultural heritage of community members, then they started to see science from a different perspective, what some scholars refer to as two-eye seeing. And they went on to do their own projects on indigenous knowledge and science as well. And one of them, actually, she did her project. She worked with little ones, grade 4s. I will email with that thesis to share with others, Prof. Ket, on how to teach the topic of sound to grade 4s so that they can transition from grade 3 to grade 4. And we managed to identify an old 94-year-old Mama Makulu from the community, still alive, to do that. So now it's a kind of us looking beyond what we are having in the textbook, what we are having in our schools. And of course, you know, the purpose of this presentation is for us to be able to communicate, to share, learn from one another. I hope I've answered your question.
No,
Thanks,
absolutely. I think that your wisdom on how we influence people from the university, especially since we are preparing teachers, but then also how we connect that to our research as well. And I think when we start inviting and walking the talk in a way, then it also filters into other spaces. So thank you so much, Ken. I know there's going to be some robust conversation in the breakout rooms. You can go into the chat and maybe respond to some of the people there who've also been quite delighted by your conversation. And I think you remind us a lot of the things that are still needing to be done despite our many years of democracy, and what are the ways in which we can do some of this integration. So thank you also for bringing some of the research voices into our space. It's important that we also learn from that. So with that, let me say breakout rooms are to come later. But for now, I'd like to ask the audience if they would perhaps indulge us in our Mentimeter exercise. There is a Mentimeter question. Lesedi, could you please put that Mentimeter link back into the chat or into the chat right now? I know you did it earlier. People may have missed that. And colleagues, if you could perhaps just respond to that Mentimeter question that we've put in there. It's open-ended. And the question really is centered around, you know, how do we enhance teachers' voices? What are the ways, in your opinion, can we start to make teacher voices louder? What would be those ways? And of course, you are very welcome to include in there some of the community voices as well. As Ken was saying, we seem to be, losing touch with the people who could make the most difference in our classrooms. So please feel free to respond to that Mentimeter question. And while you're doing that, it gives me great pleasure. Today is a day of inviting more of the family in to introduce our next speaker, who is also a very dear colleague and somebody who has been in education for a very long time. She is currently the Dean of Education at the University of Mpumalanga. She is Professor Hilda Israel. Hilda is an expert in teaching, assessment, and applied language studies. She chairs the UMP Institutional Forum and the Teaching and Learning Committee. Her research focuses on multilingualism, curriculum, Africanization, and educational assessment. and she has led international projects in translated training for African languages. Professor Israel addresses key social issues like inequality, HIV/AIDS, and climate change in her teaching. And today she begins to wow us with a conversation around teachers change the world, one child at a time. But before Hilda proceeds, there is an introductory song that she wanted us to listen to. And so, Lesedi, if you could put the song on so people could listen to it. And then after that, over to you, Hilda. We look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sedi, for playing that clip. I noted I wanted a minute of it, but we've heard more, and the words are pertinent too. But good afternoon to the Kagiso Trust leadership, to Professor Khatija Yassim, Professor Kenneth, and to all the colleagues in the education fraternity who are present here today. I do hope that you enjoyed listening to Tracy Chapman's song, Revolution. I'm waiting for Sedi to, thank you, Sedi. We are on slide 2. Thank you. I hope that you caught the words that are going to inform my talk today. Don't you know, talking about a revolution, it starts with a whisper. Remember that if we want social systems to change, to transform, to be revolutionized, it starts with a whisper, with one person. Teacher, it starts with you. You can change the world, one child at a time. Today is World Teachers' Day. It's a conversation, it's a celebration. And it's a moment in time that we will not get again. And the challenge that I want to throw out to you right up front is this. Within this conversation, teacher, can you find your voice? Not just on World Teachers' Day, but every day. In your classroom, school, community, teaching district. Indeed, in your province in South Africa. And so we come to the concept that to teach is to lead. And each of you has a most powerful role, that of shaping how a child thinks. Through that one child multiplied, the teacher changes a community, a country, the world. Yes, this is how a teacher leads. And I would like for you to reflect on the slide that is on screen right now. Reflect on the power of this extract. that it is my response that decides whether a child is humanized or dehumanized. With such leadership vested in the teacher in the classroom, let's just go back and interrogate the basis that a South African teacher can claim such a position. Of course, we know the routine. It's the 12-year basic education, then a teaching degree, then an appointment to a school, and hopefully thereafter a developing professional career. But what's in that classroom? What voice does the teacher have on the curriculum, the content, the methodology, the media aids, how to assess? Colleagues, the answer is simple. The teacher does not have a voice directly heard in government policies. What about CAPS, the National Curriculum Statement, the Annual Teaching Plan? If you put the CAPS document and ATP on your head, you are the required basic education teacher. So teacher, your voice is critical. It's valuable, it's needed. And where do you find your voice in these documents? CAPS amended the National Curriculum Statement, and it was meant to provide more uniformity across the country. It was formulated in 2010, 2011, then implemented over 2012 to 2014. But local teachers, did they have their voices heard in these processes? It was stated that CAPS was intended to enlighten teachers. Pause here. Enlighten teachers by prescribing content and methodology? A basic education principle was being ignored here, moving from the known to the unknown. How does one enlighten teachers when they were not consulted in the first place? Does this not indicate that the teacher's input was not valued? Their voice was not needed, not respected. And so it becomes clear that if we do not incorporate teacher voices, then we are hindering the democratization of education. It's 2024. The DBE implements CAPS. There's compliance personnel drilling right down to the HODs in schools, in classrooms. And yet it is totally forgotten that teachers are dealing with a generation that has to develop some very important skills because they need those skills to navigate the fourth industrial revolution. And some of these skills include the 4Cs framework: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. So if they are using the annual teaching plan, which is enforced by department staff, by compulsory workbooks, but these workbooks do not consider all contexts. They are not encouraging the development of these critical skills. And at the same time, they are not stimulating the creative voices of the teachers. And so if we exclude teachers' perspectives, are we not saying then that we distrust teachers? We choose to ignore their capacity, their professionalism? Will they then buy into CAPS or into the Bela Bill? Such new policies and reforms will then become irrelevant to teachers, to their students, and basically to societies at large. So, an important aspect of incorporating teacher voices is the increased buy-in of teachers. And colleagues, if there is no buy-in, the world will not be positively changed, one child at a time. And so teachers, where is your voice? How can you make your voice heard outside the classroom? To your HOD, your principal, indeed to your provincial minister, to the national minister. This is why we are here today, to reflect on where we are, to seize the moment, carpe diem, and to identify ways in which to make our voices heard. Like Tracy Chapman's song, we need to start with a whisper, to start small, to start with one person. Why not you? As teachers, we need to transform ourselves into visible change agents. It's our responsibility to initiate a new social contract within our profession. We need to be more engaged in deciding the curriculum we teach, how relevant it is. And we need to start this where we are, at our schools. This is where your voice needs to be heard first, even if just a whisper. The revolution will come in the system later. Remember what Mandela said? Do what you can, where you are, with whatever you have. For the university teacher training educators present, is the program design inclusive of your higher education context? Is the process inclusive of persons who hear your voice? Or is the system the crucial factor? Acknowledging, therefore, that teachers in South Africa actually do not have a voice, it's imperative that we break the cycle today. It is possible to initiate a new movement, one that starts at whisper level, and to develop it at our schools first. Ultimately, it can move to provincial and national level. And colleagues, we know technology today makes all things possible. At basic level, our communication needs to be improved. Remember, to teach is to lead, to act now. And so let's start a simple exercise which you can finish later. You can use your WhatsApp. Reflect on your classroom, the school where you are teaching right now. Write down one meaningful change that you would like to see in your school. Just one meaningful change. Once you are done, then later, justify this change with valid reasons. Motivate for the benefits of your request. Write it down in a convincing manner and send it to 5 colleagues in your school. Ask them to critically evaluate your motivation. With their support, convert your WhatsApp message into a memo format and send it to your head of department and principal. I am hoping that the collective voice of 6 teachers will make your principal hear what you are saying and subsequently act on it. You see, improving communication involves creating roles that will bridge the gap between the teaching staff and the local leadership. Surveys with larger numbers of teachers can be done on Google, and the collective results submitted to the MECs. Did you ever voice your opinion on the number of assessments that you were required to do on CAPS? Why not? After all, you, the teacher, had to conduct all of them. In all of this, only you, the teacher, has a relevant understanding on the time taken for each of your learners to understand, to assimilate the content that you are expected to cover. You know their aptitude. You know how overcrowded your classroom is, or the lack of discipline. Yet, the logo splashed across the DBE website says, "Every child is a national asset." Ironic, isn't it? So is every teacher. If the teacher is not first also recognized as a national asset, then there is something drastically wrong. And it's because teachers form a critical mass in society. They can change the norms. We have just been informed of the Global Report on Teachers. It reveals that 44 million teachers will be needed by 2030. 15 million in sub-Saharan Africa. What they say has to be valued and heard. If the Sustainable Development Goal 4 is to actually be translated into its purpose, which is inclusive and equitable quality education. So teacher, where is your voice? Actually, it's there. But you have been silenced by the education system and by your complacency, maybe even our apathy. The social contract has to be revised. Teacher voices have to be meaningfully included, transparently. We started this conversation with a song telling us that we can change the social contract by starting with a whisper. Let's respond to the new Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Siviwe Gwarube, who is now initiating her own whispers. This is what she wrote this past Sunday in the Sunday Times. I'll give you a moment to read through it. Notice, she points out that challenges can be resolved if we pursue sustained efforts to strengthen systems. What can we whisper to her? One way to strengthen the systems, Madam Education Minister, is to deliberately hear the voices of the teachers who implement your systems. The African Union's Agenda 2063 speaks to the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. And its first strategic objective focuses on the teacher to revitalize the teaching profession. But this strategy can be driven only by teachers, because it will be teachers who will enable Africa to become a knowledge economy and to be a credible competitor in a globalized world. And so I would like to challenge every teacher listening to find your voice, but to also remember that finding my voice is more than talking, writing, or self-expression. Ponder carefully on the words of Rod Smith here. Whatever we want to say, we have to package it in a way that others will want to hear what we have to say. And so we need an action plan. What does this require of us, the teachers? How can we celebrate the 2024 World Teachers' Day differently? Among other values, I think the most important is for us to live the calling of being a teacher. And that word calling has to be unpacked in every aspect. We have to own our profession, to be professionals, and to speak and live with integrity. We have to show that we are ethical leaders. And so, teachers, we have to learn how to better use our voices. Don't you know? If we are talking about a revolution, it sounds like a whisper. You can truly change the world, one child at a time. It starts with a whisper. Let's continue this education conversation. Thank you, Ngiyabonga and Asante Sana. Happy Teachers' Day. Thank you.
Hilda, that was just an amazing call and so practical in how we can take action today. I put your PowerPoint slide and the WhatsApp instructions and so forth onto the chat, just so that people can take a photo of it and begin today, because I think you're absolutely right. It begins with us. We can't be waiting for somebody else to take action, and we all need to be engaged and doing this. I really love the way you threaded the song that a revolution simply begins with a whisper throughout your presentation. And I'm sure everybody in the room completely identified, with a lot of what you had to share this afternoon. And definitely your entire presentation actually links in very well with the Mentimeter exercise that we had conducted earlier on, which asked the question of how can we amplify teacher voices, particularly when it comes to education transformation. I'm just trying to check in the chat if there's any questions in there that I can immediately share with you. And so somebody says, okay, the idea of a revolution, I think, is what everybody is really interested in. And I think everybody is looking at that particular term as something that needs to happen with some urgency, and that it has been too long overdue. Completely agree with you. Teacher voices are something that we neglect in many ways. And so even though a lot of transformation has happened, maybe that's why the implementation of transformation doesn't quite take place. Maybe just a question to just maybe get the juices rolling while Lesedi prepares the Mentimeter responses, is to ask, when we think of our own students, particularly in our university classrooms, who are preparing to become the next set of teachers, the next cadre of teachers who will find their way into our school. We find that normally at university, they are quite able to debate, they're quite able to look at things critically and so forth. But then when they actually enter the schooling system, very fast, their voices are quite silenced. Part of it is because they're new and they're trying to also fit in and learn, but there's also this culture of keeping people silent as well. And I wonder if you had any thoughts about how can we offer our students, in particular new teachers who will enter the system, some support in terms of them being also part of the amplification of voices and part of the revolution that you speak of.
Thank you, Prof. I think a lot of our teacher education programs have exactly the same problem that we were addressing in terms of school education. A lot of it is prescriptive, and the creativity of the teacher is lost in the same way that the creativity of the lecturer can sometimes be lost. And as I was preparing this, I kept going back to the word freedom. How much freedom does a lecturer, a teacher have in order to convey the content, the transfer of knowledge, as we would call it, in a way that it would speak to the need of an individual child at the child's point of need? And again, that's why I said, what have we done about the huge numbers in our classrooms? Because immediately it's a barrier to us meeting the need of the individual child. So at university level, I am not clear about how a program is ultimately approved, and yet the voice of the lecturer who is going to teach it is not a part of that process. So at an escalated level, the problem is the same as the school problem.
For sure.
So that's how I'm thinking about it, that the teacher needs more freedom in translating the policies into practice. So communication becomes a key issue, as stated in the presentation.
No, absolutely correct. And I think that your action plan for what we can all do is not only limited to school, it could be limited, it could be wherever you find yourself. And so I'll definitely be using that process within my own space to try and get some of the conversation going. But as you can see on the screen, we have a beautiful set of responses to how can we amplify teachers' voices. You pointed out a number of ways. I like one of the participants who says, embrace teacher authentic identities. And again, speaking or backtracking back to how free are we to have that expression? How free are we to be able to teach things in a way that is going to be connected to the world of the child and going to be most appropriate for that particular, kind of way? Conscientize teachers about their power of agency. And I think you've tried to do that by the very practical way in which you suggested them to include their voice and not wait for someone to invite them in, but to start with the whisper. And the whisper could very well be that WhatsApp communication that might, I hope many people will take advantage of that suggestion. Normalize and guide teachers as reflective researchers. Again, completely agree. I think we don't, although we train our students or work with them on reflective praxis, while they're with us, I don't know in the follow through as they become teachers in their own right in schools, whether that praxis continues or does it get forgotten at university because it's just there for a mark. And I think how do we make our students more committed to that reflexive praxis, and how do they use it for decision making? And then, of course, this idea of decolonization and operationalizing it, in many ways. Building teacher confidence through more training. And I think part of this would also be the kind of PD that schools may get involved with, where teachers are given spaces for conversation, for voice, and not only just the tick box exercise. Every time you have a meeting, it's just a administrative exercise, but that we use the time to also get some of the feedback and some of their thought processes, into the space. And then using professional learning communities as a way for creating reflection, and a way in which people can empower one another, engaging and involving teachers in all aspects of education policy change, which I know, as you stated also in your presentation, is not happening enough. And then consulting teachers with change, because I think there's also a kind of a transformation fatigue, a change fatigue amongst people, because they've just been told what to do all the time with no agency of their own in terms of their own voices. Provide strategies for them to use indigenous knowledges. And part of it is exactly what you said. Where is the freedom? Where is the space for them to bring community members in, for them to do things differently? And how is that viewed when they have such a prescriptive curriculum and such a tight time frame in which to get things done? So, Professor Israel, that was an amazing conversation, and I really love the practical way in which you've given us some way forward in terms of starting today. I'm sure there are things that are happening on the ground, but certainly you've given us a way forward on how to start today. We're going to break out into our breakout rooms now. And Hilda and Ken, you've been given a room each. And so participants from the audience will come into those rooms to further the conversation with you. And in general, it could include both conversations. It doesn't really matter. Lesedi, if you could just maybe put people into breakout rooms, please. And colleagues who are going into breakout rooms, please don't leave. Your voice is just so important. And this is one example where you can play an amazing role. What an amazing conversation. I was part of Ken's room, and I'm sure Hilda's room must have also had just as wonderful conversations that's going on. And so, unfortunately, it does mean that we do come to a point where we have to bring together the learnings in terms of the conversation that we had together this afternoon. And so, with that, I would like to invite Professor Parvati Naidu, Mamsi, as we know her fondly, to perhaps collate together some of the learnings that had come out of the individual rooms and then call closure to our session. Thanks, Mamsi.
Thank you, Prof. Kat. I must say I've really learned so much in the presentations, from the presentations today, and I loved the deliberations that also went on. The room that I was in had some exciting thoughts. So I'm going to just very briefly speak about the learnings from both presenters. And I'll also give a little bit of my view on the importance of teachers. Okay, Prof. Kenneth started off by saying that teaching starts from home, and I think we all very undoubtedly agree with that. He spoke about the decolonization of the science curriculum, and he also mentioned to us his positionality on that. He further went on to say teachers are the center of the curriculum. And he also spoke about taking the classroom to the community and the community back to the classroom. He very passionately spoke about his student Ndlovu, who is creating a school of excellence, and how reflective journals contribute to new knowledge creation. He also spoke about teachers, how can they be capacitated? And that's an important one, because I think in our current situation, we find that due to lack of professional development that is so necessary, we find that teachers do tend to not give off their best. Prof. Kenneth also spoke about tapping and embracing the cultural heritage of indigenous knowledge. And here, he so passionately related Mama Joyce's contributions in the making of bread and umkomboti. Prof. Kenneth also shared his success stories of the master's students that graduated. And this is a nice one that I particularly liked, where he says we should all embrace and advance the Ubuntu philosophy. And that was done through the sharing of the corn seeds amongst neighbors, which really highlights the Ubuntu philosophy. Prof. Kenneth speaks with great passion and commitment about everything that he does, and I think this shone through so nicely. And I'm sure, colleagues, you will agree with that. He went on to say that teachers' voices absolutely matter, and applying indigenous knowledge in the classroom and science, and linking science to the classroom is very important on all levels. I want to actually thank Professor Kenneth for such an inspiring presentation, and I am sure that everyone present in the room thoroughly enjoyed that. Can I now quickly go on to Professor Hilda? And I'm so in line with what Prof. Hilda said. Everything does start with a whisper. The video that she played us was sensational. For social systems to change, colleagues, it can start with one person. And I think she highlighted that very well. And to teach is to lead. I like that one. And that will result in whether a child is humanized or dehumanized. Now, in our current situation in South Africa, we do find that teachers do not have voices. Everything is a top-down approach where teachers are given the curriculum. And I also want to make a very controversial statement here that, let's hope you agree with me. If you don't, it's also fine. That with the change of every Minister of Education comes a new curriculum. And we saw that with OBE, RNCS, NCS, CAPS, and so on. Prof. Hilda also did a reality check in the classroom, where she used a framework of the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And she emphasized that there should be an increased buy-in from teachers. Teachers can become the visible change agents within their schools. You can make a difference if you stand collectively. That came out quite strongly. In South Africa, do teachers have a voice? We know that they don't. So what are we going to do about it? And I liked the strategy that she proposed, where we write one change that we wish to see, and we share that with 5 or 6 colleagues. And you develop that into a memo and you send it out. I think that's a very good initiative. And I would think, colleagues, that that is also applicable to universities and so on. Any institution of learning. Every child is a national asset. And she also said that every teacher, of course, is a national asset, because you mold the little minds of children from the time they enter your class until they leave. She said that society needs to be all-inclusive, and that can only be done with our intervention. Teachers drive social transformation, and they revitalize education. Finding my voice needs to be packaged in a way that others would want to hear what you are saying. And I agree so much with the next one, that teaching is a calling. So to all the teachers out there, you are doing your best. Continue doing that. Anyone can change a situation, colleagues, and it starts with a whisper. I think I've summed up most of the information, most of the sharing from both Prof. Kenneth and Prof. Hilda. Prof. Kat, would you like me to continue with closing off, or have you got a few words from your side or the Kagiso Trust?
I absolutely thought that you did an amazing job with collating all of the learnings together, and we so appreciate your picking out of those really critical areas. And I think that maybe what brings together the whole conversation is that if every child is considered to be a national asset, then every teacher must be too. And I think if we take that message into all of our spaces. One little thing that I just want to point out from our conversation room, there are some student teachers in our space, as well as very young teachers. I just want to shout out to them to say that you are equally invited into the conversation. Nothing stops you from also just contributing and having your say, because your voice counts too. So with that, Mamsi, I think we can call closure to the session, even though we're a little bit earlier, and people can then maybe grab a cup of coffee as they leave us. So please go ahead and call closure to the session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Kat. Colleagues, this is our last education conversations, and you will agree that it's ending with very vibrant deliberations and discussions around reimagining the role of teachers within a new social construct. Do teachers' voices matter? Absolutely, yes. This conversation, colleagues, has highlighted the need for a further social dialogue outside of this platform to meet the global agenda of reimagining the role that teachers play within society. The webinar emphasized collaborative decision-making from both presenters, teacher professional agency, and systemic support for teachers to feel appreciated and valued. I think that's the important one, being appreciated, respected, and valued. On behalf of the Faculty of Education, specifically the Department of Education Leadership, and of course, Kagiso Trust, our wonderful collaborators, I thank our two esteemed, accomplished, distinguished speakers, Professor Nkobo and Professor Israel, for their inspiring and engaging conversations. Our thanks also goes out to all the delegates who attended and stayed from the beginning right till the end, and you participated actively in today's conversations. Finally, colleagues, as the academic year is approaching the end, I take this opportunity to wish all present, especially teachers who are busy preparing for exams, good marking, enjoy your marking, and to everyone else, a blessed festive season. Stay safe until we see you for the first Education Conversations 2025. Thank you so much, Prof. Kat.
Thank you, everybody, and goodbye until next time. Take care, stay
Thank
safe,
you.
and we look
Bye-bye.
forward to connecting to all of you. Take care.
Thank you,
Thank
Prof,
you.
and
Bye-bye.
goodbye.
Bye. Bye.